Three of the four cats that we have are outdoor cats, indoor cats. We let them in and out, and it's kind of funny because they will sit outside looking in, wanting in, and you let them in, and very shortly after they're sitting at the door looking out, wanting out, and so you say, naturally, I mean human thinking, do you want in or out? And they just say yes. And that kind of describes us. Do you want peace or do you want to be real involved in the world? It's a choice, in a sense, that we are making all the time. There's always a reason to get so involved that we get upset or we get out of the zone of peace because we're trying to resolve things. I just got a notice on through my email on my phone that said I have a fraudulent charge on my credit card of $150. So there's always something to think about, always something that's going on and of course I know I'll get that resolved and I'm not concerned about it. It's just that we live in a world that's always calling our attention. I bought a piece of software the other day, and you have to create 3 accounts to purchase it and own it. And that means 3 passwords, and it means 3 of everything to own one thing. So I'm not complaining, I'm just complaining because I get really tired of that, but I love the nice things about it. The fact that you can own a piece of software that you want and have it downloaded in a matter of minutes. In that particular case, it took a day. Had to wait all night. So that's another issue that brought me out into the world and caused me to complain about the service because that's never happened before. But there's a million things like that. And with the internet, with our money all on plastic and all the stuff that we're doing instantaneously, with all the advantages of that, there are some drawbacks. And those drawbacks sometimes call our attention in a big way. And so it makes you wonder, is it worth it? And apparently we think it is because we keep doing it and we keep going down that road. And I really wouldn't want to change much. I wish there was only one password and I'd never had to have another one, but I have like 4 pages of passwords over the years I've accumulated, and I'm afraid to throw any of them away because there's been occasions where I had to go back and find that password to that piece of software, even though it was outdated, to get something, I don't even know what, but to make your life whole. You have to have software to make your life work. So that's a thing that we have to deal with. There's always a call to come out. And so we are very externally oriented just by virtue of culture. And it's easy to understand external things. I think Jesus was a mystic. And one of the reasons I think that we lost his message, that his message died with him on the cross, is because it was handed over to a very externally oriented world. If you, for example, go on and find the Apostles' Creed, you'll find about a little over a dozen points of statements, written statements, for you to believe if you're to be a Christian. Basically, that's the criteria. And what does it take to be a mystic? Where's that list? Why isn't it being taught? It's because it's too hard to get. It's too hard to grasp. And the reason Christianity went from an inner-oriented movement to an outer-oriented movement is because the outer-oriented movement is much easier to understand. You can take a creed and you can pass it on from one generation to another, and you can memorize it and you can say, this is what we believe. But the mystic relies on direct experience, and you can't pass direct experience on. When you listen to the near-death people tell their story, every single one of them will say, there are no words to describe what I'm going to try to describe. I can't tell you what I went through. I can tell you what it is like to the best of my ability, but there is no language to convey this. The near-death experience and the mystical experience are very similar. There is no language to describe the mystical experience because it is an experience. I can take a sip of orange juice and try to explain to you who's never had a sip of orange juice what that is like. No matter how much I try to describe it, you'll never get it until you take a sip of orange juice. And what is taking the sip of orange juice? It's not an intellectual exercise, it's an experience. And that experience teaches you more in a second than all of the speaking I could do. I looked up the ingredients of orange juice, the chemical ingredients of orange juice, and it's like 3 pages long. If I was a scientist, maybe I could taste it after reading all of the things that are in it, but I doubt it. But you can't pass on the taste of orange juice. You can describe what it's made of. You can describe what it looks like. It's the same with the mystical experience, the same with the near-death experience. And that is what we're learning is the near-death experience. They're saying the mystic understands their language and the near-death experiencer understands the language of the mystic. But the traditional intellectual thinker understands the language of neither because they have not had the experience. And that's what's important. That's what we are talking about when we're addressing this subject today from the inside out. We're talking about experience. And if you have not had a mystical experience, don't feel bad about that. If you believe it's possible to have some type of an inner awakening that you have not yet had, but you think is possible, that's faith. And that's faith pointed in the proper direction, because it's open to that possibility of there's something more within me that I have not yet experienced. But if that idea draws you, if you resonate with it, that's your faith opening up. You're starting to move in that direction. And the direction is not, I will believe that there's something in me. It's, I will experience that's something within me. There's the chance of doing that, the opportunity to do that. And many people like the near-death experience, or they can be driving down the road and get hit by another car and be in a world they never even dreamed of in just an instant. Whereas the mystic is usually the person who's working consciously in that direction, sitting in quiet time and reading about it, associating with like-minded people who have that experience of preparing themselves, preparing their mind for that experience. And yet they both end up having a very similar type of experience. They experience a dimension that can't be put into words. But that's why Christianity went, in my thinking, from a mystical movement to a very outer-oriented, an outside-in movement. When Jesus was talking about the kingdom of God, he was talking about an inside experience, from the inside out. The kingdom doesn't come with observation. You can't say lo here or lo there. That's what the mystic says. I'm not talking about something you can see. I'm talking about something you experience. And then the traditionalist comes along and says, one of these days, it's going to come out of heaven. It's going to drop down out of the sky, and our politics, our culture, our social arrangement, all of this stuff is going to change. You're going to be prosperous. Things in your life are going to happen in ways that they're not happening now. Very outer-oriented and a very appealing message. Who doesn't want that? We all do, and we can grasp that. And I was just thinking about how much easier, like a guy like Jesus comes along and says it's within you, the kingdom is within you. What's that mean? Just like telling Nicodemus, you've got to be born again. Nicodemus is going, what? How can you get back into your mother's womb? He was taking it totally literally. And he was a religious teacher, which is probably one of the hardest to convince. Just like modern science has such a hard time accepting as real the near-death experience because it's very material-oriented, very outer-oriented. Reality is this, what we can touch and see. You can't have an experience when your body's flatline, when your heart's flatline. You can't have that. It just can't happen. And the person says, well, I was above your head and you got a bald spot right here, so I think I saw something. So that is changing very slowly. It's starting to change, and that's a good thing. But what I'm saying is that being externally oriented is a lot easier than trying to live from the inside out. And so that's what we're confronted with as people who have bodies. And that includes, I think, most of us in this room. And there's probably a few in this room that don't have bodies, but I don't know who they are. But that is one of the things we have to contend with. So anything I say, anything we read about learning to live life from a spiritual awareness, we're going to have moments where we touch that, where we see that possibility, and then we lose it because we get a text from our bank that says we've got a fraudulent charge on our card. It brings us right down to earth instantly. And it's there's a million things like that happen all the time. You go home and your swamp cooler isn't working, or it's working too well and your ceiling's caved in, as we had happen one year. There was a burst water pipe through the winter and turned it on spring and get home and the whole ceiling looks like a hammock. But that's long ago and I've forgotten it till just now. So the question is, where is the inner? Where is the inner presence, the inner kingdom, the inner peace? It's easy to let a concept like this become such a cliché that it loses its power of meaning. So that's an important thing to hold in mind. What do I mean by inner? What do I mean by the kingdom is within? And what we mean is experience. It's experiential, like you're having an experience right now of, say, negativity, some negative reaction to something. Well, you're able to let that go and see yourself as a fountain of peace, where you begin to actually experience peace. The inner is all about experience. It's about internal experience. That is, as I have said 1,000 times, what determines the quality of life. It doesn't matter so much what you're going through on the outside. That matters, but what's really important is how you're reacting to it, the kind of experience you're having within yourself. That's the quality of life. Because two people can experience exactly the same thing. One person's totally at peace, the other's totally frantic. Same experience outside, completely different inside. So that's what we're talking about when we're saying, where is this stuff? It is experience. It's at my level of inner experience. That's what I want to watch. Eric Butterworth, one of Unity's more prolific authors, he's passed on now, suggests that we stop praying to God and start praying from a consciousness of God. And that really struck me when I first read it. I think it was in, it was one of his books. He wrote a lot of them. But stop praying to God. That's the outer, from the outside in. Get God's attention. I never was good at getting God's attention unless I was doing things wrong. Then God always paid very close attention. But when I wanted something good to happen, I seemed to have trouble getting God's attention. So that's praying to a God, praying to something outside of myself. And he's saying pray from the awareness of the presence of God. In other words, you never ask for something to come about. You affirm it's already present. You affirm it's already here. The potential for it is already here. And you open yourself to it. It's like opening a gate and letting that good come through. But when we live our life in fear, we're shutting off the very quality of life that we seek. And so to pray from the awareness of God is to pray from this attitude that everything, even though I don't see it at the moment, everything's in divine order. And that order is now unfolding in a very positive, very beautiful way. And that infinite wisdom, infinite life, infinite intelligence is working through me now to bring about that greater good. That is an attitude, that's an experience. Because if I truly grasp that, I become peaceful. I let myself enjoy the truth of those words, of that attitude. And to let myself enjoy that is a change in experience. And it's a choice. And I'm sure you have done this too, have proven to myself that I can be frantic one moment, stop myself, and change that into knowing everything is working out, everything is unfolding as it should. And when you make that shift in thinking, you're taking an inside-out approach. That doesn't mean that you know all the answers, or the way it's going to unfold. It's just that it's going to. You know it's going to. And how many of those have you confronted or how many of those things have been involved in your life in the past? We lose count. It's just one of the joys of having a body. There's always going to be crap. What's a better word? I almost said another word, but I didn't. Challenge. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Ideally, this would mean that we have had enough of a spiritual awakening to know God as our center of power. If we've not yet had such an awakening, then our center of power is our faith that it is so, which is what I mentioned in the very beginning. You may not have had a mystical experience that says to you, I know that was real, I know it was the most real thing I've ever experienced in my life. You may not have had one of those. But the idea that your faith is turned in that direction, I don't know what it is. There's something in me, there's a level in me I have not yet discovered. I know it's there. And that's, Jesus was very clear about to ask and keep asking, keep knocking, keep persisting in this direction until the awakening of some kind occurs. And that awakening usually is, well, I believe it can happen. The faith changes. The faith is open. In other words, your telescope is no longer pointing to the ground. You tilt it up a little bit and you start seeing the potential for it. That's your faith. It's pointed up in the right direction. This is a metaphor, so it's not God up in the sky. It's the use of the faith faculty. Our faith is usually in things are not going to work out so well. And we're saying, now God's in charge. There's a greater good unfolding through me. That's shifting your telescope, shifting your faith in a new direction. Our prayers based on the expectation that God unfolding through us is now bringing about the highest and best solution to our situation. We assume that the power to change things is with us now and doing its perfect work. So that's the shift in faith. And all we have to do is catch ourselves, and we ask ourselves, do I really believe this stuff? Do I really think there's a possibility here that if I change my mind, I could change my life? And if we say, well, I think that's possible, just not in this situation. So we would ask ourselves, why not? I had that experience many years ago that I told you about. I worked on my father had a construction business, and I worked in that, and I hated it. Every day, every moment I was out there, I thought I was wasting my life. And I discovered Unity Village, the headquarters of this movement, and I would drive there 60 miles one way every week, 2 and 3 times sometimes, because it meant so much. And when I was there, I felt so one with God. I felt like this is what I want, this is what I love. And I'd go home and Monday morning, start the job again, and just absolutely hate it. And it occurred to me that if I can experience that state of mind at Unity Village, why can't I experience it on the construction job? And that was a pretty important question for me to ask myself. And so I started going into that job early before anyone got there. I would be in this framed out house, and I would sit down and meditate and just open myself to the presence of God. I would use affirmations. I would do whatever I could to get myself in that same frame of mind that I was in when I was there. Because it's not the real estate, it's not the location, it's the description of the place you're at. I was describing that as closer to heaven than the construction job, so to speak. That was my problem. That was a problem I was creating. Because when I would go to Unity Village and listen to the sermon or the talk, that minister would usually say God is everywhere present equally at the same time, which means, well, God must be present on that construction site. But maybe I'm not so present. Maybe I'm not so aware. Maybe the change is not, God, get me out of this, to God, get me into this. Wake me up to what is true here in this situation so I can see a broader experience and have a broader experience. And that began to happen. And I got to the point where I would see subcontractors, people that were coming and going all the time. You see them as messengers. You see them as bearers of something they don't even, the last thing on their mind, I'm sure that they're thinking. But everybody and everything has something to give you when you're open to it, has something to offer. And they give you the opportunity also to give from yourself, which is really the key. And what I was giving of myself is my attitude. I said to myself, this is the kingdom of God. God is everywhere present, spread out equally upon this planet, and I'm in it. And if I can have that experience 60 miles away, why not here if it's all the same? And it comes down to choice. I was living from the outside in. I'd go to this place that I don't like, and so that means I can't have a good experience in a place I don't like. So I proved to myself that, yes, I can. I can have an incredible experience. And what amazes me even to this day, it was just a very short period of time that I started doing that. And I did it again at my very first church up in Bay City, Michigan, a place I did not want to be. And I've told you that story too, but when I started agreeing with it's okay, then doors open. And it wasn't but a very short time when I was no longer on the construction job. I was sitting in the classroom learning how to be a minister. And of course, you don't learn how to be a minister in a classroom. You have to get out in real life to do that. And I was given that opportunity. So I've never ceased to be amazed by that. Situation you think is impossible. I can't experience anything good over there. Can anything good come from Nazareth? Well, we found out there's at least one thing. So one's all it takes. The outside-in approach assumes God is somewhere separate from us, and when we ask for help, we hope God will overlook our shortcomings and give us what we seek or what we ask. We treat God as a super capable person who responds to our request at his discretion. Do you ever find yourself still doing that? You don't have to nod. You don't have to raise your hand. I do. I find myself still looking outside of myself for God to respond in some way. You pray for something and you plant the seed and you dig it up every other day to see if it's growing. And we do that in a lot of different ways, but it's like an outside in. When that change occurs, then I'll be happy. I'll be satisfied. I'll know something's good. But like on my construction job, I found the good before the change occurred. And I did that in Michigan as well, that first church. I started affirming, I don't care where I am in the presence of God. And the door's open. So the real door, though, is that inner experience. You shut off. I can't be happy here because I'm here. I've got to be there. How many of you have ever been there in your whole life? You can raise your hand. Has anybody managed to accomplish that? You're here and you want to be there. How many of you actually have made it there? Because when you're there, where are you? You're here. When you're there, you're here. When you're here, you're never there. You'll long to be there, and that longing is the rub. It's the issue. It's the problem. It's the experience. It's the quality of life. I want to be there. I can't be happy here. Well, it seems to be true, and it looks like it's true, and I would get plenty of support if I started polling my friends and family. They would all agree, yeah, you should be there. And you're not, so I understand why you're unhappy. Poor you. You'll get a lot of sympathy. But the mystic would say that there is no there. Technically speaking, there is no there. I can only be here. What's going on here? How am I perceiving my here? I'm perceiving it as wishing I was there. And that creates a problem. And that's the problem that we want to solve, and we do it from the inside out. We look first at what's going on in us. See yourself as a fountain bubbling forth the life, love, power, and intelligence of God. Imagine this divine energy flooding into whatever concerns you, dissolving all fear, all doubt, all feelings of uncertainty about what you are to do. And I was doing that this week. There was something, I don't even remember what the issue was. Oh, I think it was a software issue where I found myself reacting to something I didn't like. And so I started saying, well, I am now the fountain of God, and I am bubbling forth life, love, power, and intelligence. These are the things I want. And so I'm thinking, that's got to happen before I can have them. And so I stopped thinking that and reach a level of peace that doesn't seem possible. Jesus called it the peace that passes all understanding. The understanding is that's got to be fixed before I'm going to be happy. That's how I normally approach life. But to say, why not fix it first? Why not be happy first? Because that's where the fix needs to occur. That's the quality of life. And is that possible? And yes, it is. And you can prove it to yourself. Almost any situation, if you're responding negatively to something at this moment, you can begin now to make that shift. And don't go out and dig up the seed to see if it's growing. Just make the shift and let the cards fall where they will, because they'll always fall in your favor. Always. The grapevine does not look to the outside for the fruit it bears. It does not ask to be given that which naturally comes from within the vine. And so it is with us. Taking the inside-out approach, we think of ourselves as the grapevine from which the grapes or our solutions come. That's why I started out this opening image with the grapes growing. I love that imagery of the vine and the branch and the fruit and all that stuff. The grapes come from within the plant. They're not hung on from the outside. And that's a powerful thought just to carry around, that simple idea. We see it happen every spring. We see it happen right now. Anytime you look out at something that's bearing fruit, we have plum trees, peach trees, and pear tree. And grapes. They're all coming from the inside out. And they start small and they get bigger. Often how our solutions come about, they're so small at first you don't want to bite into them because they're very bitter. But they mature, and they mature into the solution that you're looking for. But that maturity first is how you feel about it, how you are experiencing the whole thing from within yourself. This does not mean that if you need more money, it will somehow appear from inside of you or some magical way. It means that you'll be inspired with an idea or you'll see some opportunity to generate the money you need. Be alert and be expectant that the answer you seek is bubbling forth through you at this very moment. We don't know how things will come about. Maybe something very totally unexpected will happen. We don't ever want to rule that out. But to associate this with magic in any way whatsoever, we don't want to do that. I was reading a story about Tesla. What's his first name? No, Tesla. Nicholas. Something. Anyway, Tesla. He invented a remote control boat which had never been seen, in history. And he apparently told people there were little people inside this boat, and he put it on this pool of water and had the crowd that was gathered around shout out commands, turn right, turn left. And he was, running the remote. And the people were freaking out. And then he said, he confessed there are no little people, and he got the boat up and, there's no little people. I'm doing this. And they were more freaked out by the idea of a radio-controlled device than they were little people inside of it. And they accused him of being a mystic, which back then and even today carries that idea. We're not talking about magic. We're not talking about little people in boats. We're talking about an energy field that we are always influencing in some way, either in a positive or negative way. And we want to be aware of how we're doing that. And the fact that the outside world is not the remote control. That's not who pushes our buttons. That's not who causes us, or not what caused, although it's very common for that to happen. But we do have something to say about it. And to catch ourselves in the midst of something like this. So be alert and be expectant that the answer you seek is bubbling forth through you at this very moment. That's the shift in attitude, the shift in your faith, your faculty of faith. To shift to this inside-out mode, take a moment to close your eyes, take a refreshing breath, and know your greater good is unfolding through you right now. And it's amazing what a few moments of just finding peace in yourself can do, how it can open your mind to a whole new set of possibilities. That you do not have to have this reaction that you're having that you don't want, that you think you have to resolve this before I can feel better. Feel better, and then you'll resolve the problem. And how? You'll find out. But you will. Haven't you resolved all of them up until now? It'd be fun to know how many problems each one of us have had. Just to see the stack and see who could beat in this. No, I don't want to do that. We've all had our share, right? We've had our fair share. And we'll have our fair share yet to come. Which is why we're here today, to be reminded of how to handle them. Okay? So you know, right? Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. To subscribe to this channel, simply click our logo. Thanks again for your interest in Independent Unity, and have a wonderful week.